The Monte and the Pharaoh Show is brought to you by...
Because wine is your second favorite four-letter word. California wine, New York attitude. Good fucking wine.
Yeah.
In a row, shut up and wrestle.
Absolutely.
This is Shut Up and Wrestle. Stay tuned next week where who knows what else we'll find. But, Jeff Hardy, much respect for your wrestling ability. Stick to it because you can't fucking sing, bro.
Yeah.
Just give it a break, please.
Yeah.
So last night, Dark Side of the Ring, the Too Much Too Soon, Tony Atlas, which Monte The Pharaoh have made their second appearance on the Dark Side of the Ring family. Our video clip was used, which is a great thing. And before we get into Tony Atlas, I did want to say something that I thought was funny, Jimmy. Coming off the Missy Brutus Beefcake interview we had, which is doing very well on all of social media. We had in March, hear this, Jimmy, between all of social media, right? Yeah. Not including New York Cable, which I haven't even played that interview for New York Cable. 3.7 million views / listens. So thank you everybody for supporting us. Incredible. That interview did well. So what does our boy Hannibal do? He goes and gets Brutus Beefcake for an interview, and he starts talking about Missy, and Brutus starts talking about our show, and he cuts it and takes it out because God forbid you say our name on your podcast. It's like, we have become taboo, Jimmy. How does that make you feel? We are taboo in this world.
Makes me feel really, really good. You?
It makes me feel like I'm grateful for everybody in this room on Thursday that supported us all these 8 years, which you don't even realize. And they've supported us and a lot of love. Again, got your haters, but, I do. Who cares? I could care less about haters. And again, going back to the beginning of the show, I don't regret a single second of it at all. I will say this. Gerard, the last ring boy, which we named him. Right. Jimmy, I will say this. I'm going to open it up with this. I am almost regretting, you talked about regretting stuff. I am regretting bringing the ring boy scandal to life. That was a forgotten, dead subject until Lee Cole, right after his brother's death, came on our show. How many years ago? I don't remember. And this thing just doesn't go away now, right? No one even remembered this shit. And, Cole's got his own channel, which I don't mind mentioning, Wrestling with the Devil, right? It's supposedly doing well on YouTube.
It puts you a moral notch above Hannibal, but go on, I digress.
Right. So at one point last year, we brought on the last ring boy, which we named him Gerard Merlette, who was pro Mel Phillips. He had a relationship with Mel, and he stood by Mel. And again, on this show, we have our opinions, but when we're interviewing, it's their time to talk, not ours. We ask hard questions, but we don't come with an agenda. I will tell you that Gerard, revealed to me that his ultimate goal was just to be part of a wrestling podcast. There's nothing wrong with it. Anyway, lo and behold, last week he shows up on Wrestling in the Devil, and they interview Gerard. So if anyone knows, since that video has been taken down anyway.
The guy that Lee was so angry that we had let come on.
Yes. That he was furious that we let him on.
The hypocrisy of this all. Go on.
So Cole, along with his partner, the puppet, who just goes along with whatever Cole says, they totally destroyed Gerard, right? They just made, between cuts on, they were cutting videos, so it wasn't live. Between the cuts on the video and the way they presented it, I was so upset with Gerard for going on that show. I actually wrote him in anger. Like, what are you doing? You went into enemy land without backup, and they destroyed him. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. If you're a fan and you're watching that show, you're like, Gerard was in a relationship, some sort of relationship with Mel Phillips, and he's protecting him because maybe they were lovers, whatever the case may be, right? So,
Ew.
I'm not saying that's what. I'm just saying you come out of that interview, you're like Gerard.
Yeah.
Mel Phillips is a piece of trash, right?
Well, you know how I feel about all of this. Like the first time you told me we were going to have Leon, I was like, in general, I don't like to sensationalize. I do understand it's part of the business and we have to address this shit. So I was like, okay, deal with him. It was after that I was like, okay, we've interviewed him. I felt the same way that Jim Morrison felt to Ed Sullivan after Ed Sullivan said, "You'll never be on the show again." He said, "I just did your show." So the
Right.
way I saw it was, he was on the show. Can I give you a thank you, fuck you, bye? Am I allowed to do that? Sorry, Jim
Well,
Cornette.
let
but
me
if
ask you
the
this, and
shoe
we'll put
fits,
this to
say it.
bed. What is Jimmy
know?
Farrow's actual thoughts on the whole Tom Cole situation?
Mike, we've talked to them a billion times, and at the end of the day, all we got was something about a van and tickling feet. Right?
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day. So what do you think I think about it, guys? I think that without any concrete proof, there's no proof. So go back and forth, sensationalize Lee, make a fucking living out of it if you can. Good luck to you, Mazel Tov. I don't care. He's in the circular file to me. You know,
So, but fair to say,
Vince McMahon was never arrested for any of this. Nobody was ever arrested for any of this. True or false?
I agree. He has not.
So to me, like, even with all the grilling and talking to and all this other shit, all we got was a van, a weirdo, and tickling of feet.
With
What am I supposed to do with that, Mike?
So
You know what I mean?
so your point is, you feel it's just money hunger, like trying to make some money somewhere along the way.
I felt like that after the first time we talked to him, and he was still reaching out to you. I was like, you know me. Do you think? Okay, let's cut right to the chase on how Pharaoh feels. If you think that I was the one doing that, the booking in that particular case, am I booking him again, Mike?
No.
Well, there you go. There it is, folks. Bada bing.
Beautiful.
You like that? How I do that? It's like Dumbo. I just like
Episode
raise
4, Mr. USA, Tony Atlas. Too soon, too fast, too soon. Whatever the fuck it was.
Mike, now you got to take over on this because I haven't seen this yet.
But here's the thing, though, Jimmy. So it's basically everything that we know about Mr. USA. Okay,
we know him well. He's one of the wrestlers we've actually
spent. Let's draw back in the fan perspective, right? So Tony Atlas, young kid. Part of his story, again, he's told the story either on Marati's show, our show, or whatever numerous shows he's been on.
Mm-hmm.
As a kid, he got his head split open. He took a massive head injury. The parents didn't have any money. The mother didn't have any money to bring him to the hospital, and they just prayed for him, and he recovered. And then he says that he prayed to God that he just wanted to be big, strong, and with lots of money. So Tony goes on to become a bodybuilder. Ricky Steamboat's on the episode. They discuss about competing, against each other. Atlas, his first year in pro wrestling in 1970 something, made $100,000. I mean, if you put that in today's dollars, that's got to be $500,000, right? Give or take. Is that fair?
Probably more.
Right.
But if you prorate to today's numbers.
Yeah. And Tony being an African-American wrestler, which we all know as all wrestling fans who watch his show, this was for a very long time a white man's sport. Very hard for a black athlete really to break their way into pro wrestling. I think they had one per region. And Atlas talks about the racism and on and on and on. They go into the Rocky Johnson thing, and nothing that you don't know, I don't know. But he does tell the story, and he told the story of Monte The Pharaoh that he was actually plugged in. The story he told us is, and I need you to weigh in on this because I hope I remember it right, that Vince McMahon Sr. had decided to make Tony Atlas in a face versus face match defeat Bob Backlund for the world's WWF at the time heavyweights championship. On the dark side of the ring, he doesn't talk about who's a champion, but he tells a story that Chief Jay Strongbow tells him that, hey, Tony, tonight's match is going to be the most important match of your night. Atlas decides that he wants to go have some woman in LA step on his face. He thinks he has enough time to get to LA, see this girl, and then get back in time for the match. He no-shows it, and he will never be considered for a WWE champion again. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, if that's the truth and that's what Tony did, then it's on Tony. And Tony knows that. It's on him. Now,
but do you
while it
think
was
that
true,
Vince Sr., they were actually, at that time,
I find
considering...
I find the very thought of doing that absurd.
Thank you. So do I.
Yeah, I find that to be absurd. And I'll say this much. While it is true that it was much more difficult and that they were almost like specialists to be, an African-American professional wrestler, the facts are is that Tony was one of them that got through that door, that broke that, or crashed through that glass window, glass ceiling, whatever you want to call it. He was given opportunities from very early on. I watched his career. I remember seeing right away Tony Atlas was booked with respect. Right away. He had a body that couldn't miss, and it's because of his dedication to his bodybuilding that got him into this business. So he deserves credit for becoming a great bodybuilder, and then being able to break through the glass ceiling. But when you look like that, Mike, you would have taken him then. You would have taken him now. The shape that he was in, he was concrete structure.
Well, Jerry Briscoe said he was a great wrestler too. He was a very good wrestler too.
He threw a great drop kick, Mike.
Oh,
Back
yeah,
in those days, there weren't guys who were fluid like that. I mean, his drop kick would work today. I mean, his drop kick was beautiful.
And I will tell you this, Jimmy. So, guys, when we first met Tony and we were first interviewing Tony, Jimmy and I used to go, man, they never let that guy talk on the mic. This guy's a great talker. But you know, Jimmy, during the Dark Side, they were showing like him in like Georgia Championship Wrestling.
Yeah,
he was rapping. He was doing a Tony Atlas rap. So maybe we just weren't paying close enough attention, because I remember him in the WWF back then. He was the cleanup guy. He was Ivan Putski. It was Ivan Putski, Tony Atlas. When a heel was on his way out, you either faced one of those and they finished you off and you were sent on your way. Right. That's the way it worked.
They were top of the card faces, though.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
They existed in the penthouse of faces. They were there. They were always protected in their booking. They weren't guys that lost very often, if never. Hogan could never beat the heel Hogan with Blassie could never beat Tony Atlas. It never happened. I was like, Jesus God, when's he going to beat this guy?
Well, they show him pressing, the famous picture, him pressing Hogan, right?
Yeah. Hogan lose every time to him by count out.
Yeah. Or got pinned. I remember, didn't he get pinned too?
Got pinned.
Yeah, so it was like,
what the heck,
But here's the thing,
really,
though. Here's two of my favorite memories of professional wrestling to this day are two. When we finally got cable and we could watch Georgia Championship Wrestling, and Tony Atlas was at the Omni going to wrestle Ric Flair. Okay. We never got to see these Omni matches, but they show it later on, and he beats Flair by countout. And all the kids come running into the Omni, or it might have been, on Georgia Championship Wrestling before that match. All the kids come and they run into the ring. My second one is, and I'll still say it to this day, it's probably one of my favorite tag team matches of all time. When him and the Soul Man Rocky Johnson beat the Samoans for the world titles. That was, oh my God, I freaking lost it. I loved it.
I was a Tony Atlas fan from day one. Yeah. So to see him finally have a belt of any kind, and him and Rocky, of course, were great together, two chiseled statues. So I was very happy to see Tony. I always rooted for Tony. And then I got confused with the Samba, whatever the hell Vince did.
Well, they asked him about that, and they're like, did you think Vince wanted to embarrass you? And Tony goes, I had no money.
Right.
He goes, I would have wore a pink tutu if he told me to wear it.
Right.
Because they were showing a point where Roddy Piper goes, that's not Saba Simba, that's Tony Atlas. And they were trying to, saying Vince was trying to destroy him. And I'm thinking to myself,
well, it's not a good look. I mean, come on, man.
But dude, Tony was desolate in Maine.
I know,
high on cocaine.
But why? But Vince didn't have to bring him back like that. Come on.
At that time, it was all gimmick stuff anyway, dude.
I know.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, you're right. It was consistent with Cartoon Land because that's what Vince was doing right then. But geez, really?
This is the one thing I didn't understand. When he went to WCW, they brought him as a heel, but he lost to everybody.
Yeah.
It's like I never understood that.
Well,
Like he could have been a vicious heel.
what Tony Atlas could have been, instead of us having to sit through Pedro and I wouldn't change Tito, but I might change Pedro. I wouldn't have minded if Tony had held the Intercontinental title back in those days. You know, I could see him beating Morocco or Valentine. Why does it got to be Pedro?
Well, that's true. That
You
is true.
know, I mean that's in other words, what I'm getting at is that's the time period where if you're going to put a belt on Tony Atlas, you do it in the early '80s. Understand? That's when it should have
Listen, you know
happened.
what? I'm perfectly fine the way it worked out. When they won those tag team
Still a
belts,
great career.
it
My
was
God.
unbelievable.
Yeah, Tony
Here's
Atlas
the
is
one
great.
thing though, Jimmy, I got to tell you. So I never met his wife, right? So we've talked to Tony, man, and we're friends with Tony. He's
Yeah.
a good guy.
Are
Good.
we friends though with him, Mike?
There you go. I knew you were going to say it, and I
You
was
see
going to
what I
say,
did there?
let me not tell a let me not lie, right? So, but the one thing is at the end of the thing, they show him and his wife, and he talks about how his wife took him out of, being, drugged up in Maine, wanting to kill himself,
Mm-hmm.
and how his wife Monica, how she took him in, and it was kind of touching because when Vince had called him to come back to WWE, she was upset because she thought he was going to leave her. Right? Okay, now everything's good for me. I'm out.
Right.
And Tony says before they go into later on what happens to Monica, but basically like he owed Monica's life and he would never do that to her. And then they show Monica. Monica had a stroke.
Okay.
And I know this to be a fact because he's called me from the hospital room so many times. He goes there every day, spends like 10 hours over there taking care of her, brushing her teeth, cleaning her, being with her. And I thought to myself, like, yeah, this is a good guy. This is a guy that could have called it a day with his wife. Like it goes back to the days when we were feuding with Marati, and then I'll never forgive when Marati brought on Tony's stepdaughter.
Yeah.
If anyone remembers that might have been one of the most low down, fucking maneuvers by anybody I've ever seen, and it was pretty disgusting. And when I looked how he took care of his wife, I'm like, this man didn't deserve that. Why, for a fucking podcast? Because, it was just awful.
Agreed. Look, Tony's a survivor. I think he's a good guy. I just hope he doesn't talk about politics and religion while he's brushing her teeth.
He probably does, dude.
Oh, God. Oh, could you imagine?
So he had wrote me the other day, and he said, did you watch? Wasn't the other day. I think it was yesterday, right? Because it was Wednesday. It came on. Today's Thursday. Yeah. So wait a minute. Tuesday it was on. Sorry. Okay. So Tuesday he wrote me Wednesday. He goes, did you watch? I said, yeah. But I kind of fell asleep, right? And so I watched it yesterday, and I saw mine. Got to see Monte The Pharaoh on Dark Side of the Ring. Got to give this a cheap pop. But I wrote him, and I said, Tony, you confirmed to me that you're a good man. That's what I wrote him, because he is a good man. He's a good man. Anybody, it takes a lot out of a person, Jimmy, to take care of someone that's got nothing left in the tank.
Yeah.
Let's be honest.
It shows compassion and loyalty.
There you go. Loyalty. Love it.
And compassion. You have to have both. You can't. Loyalty is one thing, but if it's not emotionally driven, I worry about the degree of loyalty. I mean, she's not well. She's there for him when he's not well. You have to repay the kind deed. You should. Otherwise, what's the point of existence? If we all treated each other that way, I think we'd do a lot better as a whole. And I wish there were more Mr. Rogers, but unfortunately, we only experienced one that was actually like that, which is sad. Could you imagine the politicians all spoke to each other the way Fred Rogers spoke to the Senate that day when looking for additional funds for public television for children? Could you imagine what kind of world we would live in?
Do you think that Fred Rogers, if he would have known Monte The Pharaoh would have their own TV program, would have been so positive about getting funding?
I think he would have avoided us like the plague, and that's a shame because I've always admired his morals. I would try to explain to him that I'm sorry, but you're the 1% of the 1% that's actually a decent human being. I hate to break
Right.
it to you, but the rest of us suck, and we're working on it.
There you go. Hey, so tomorrow we're
Hey,
making our. I still think it's on. We're making our usual appearance on ESPN Florida, right?
yeah,
Always excited for that with the great coach.
yeah. The
So we'll
afternoon
be on
underdogs.
ESPN, the
Yeah,
afternoon underdogs.
there we go.
So we'll be on there. But on tonight's show, I'm
Hmm.
jacked for WrestleMania this year. I hope you're jacked for Wrestle. I know you're going to be working. I know that's going
Oh,
to piss
dude,
you
by the
off,
way, can
bro.
I get this out of the
Good,
way?
good.
I'm getting so tired of this too. I work through everything.
I know, dude.
I can't take it. I worked through Thanksgiving. I worked through Christmas. I worked through Christmas Eve. I worked through New Year's and New Year's Eve. I worked through Valentine's Day. I worked through St. Patrick's Day. Here comes Easter. Guess who's working? WrestleMania's coming. I'm working. I'm like, oh my God. I miss everything. I
Yeah,
miss everything.
that's